Okay, so the first question I would like to ask is, what is the craziest misconception that you've heard about sex?
More women are more likely to catch STDs than men.
HIV can be cured from having sex with a virgin.
One of the big things was about the more condoms you use, the more protected you are.
These misconceptions just scratch the surface of what students in the New York City school system think about sex. After all, we aren't taught proper sex education in our schools anyways. When it comes to sex education, New York City only mandates an HIV and AIDS curriculum. That's according to the Department of Education. It doesn't require instruction on healthy relationships or even consent. That's a problem. My name is Shoa Khan, and I'm an 11th grader at Landmark High School in Chelsea. You're listening to the Miseducation podcast, Season 7, Questioning the Status Quo. This is We Need to Talk About Sex. In this episode, you'll hear about the lax standard of sex education in New York City schools, how this affects teenagers today, and what needs to change. Like many of my peers, I get my information about sex from media and friends. Growing up, I've noticed that the stuff we hear about sex is really wrong. It's mostly just jokes, and it's not supposed to be. So, let's get into the New York City Department of Education's sex education policy. The DOE has a statement on its website that says students in grades 6 to 12 must receive, quote, age-appropriate, skills-based, and medically accurate information. However, this leaves a ton of latitude for schools to decide what and what not to teach. In addition, parents can opt their children out of having to learn about birth control methods and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. At my high school, Landmark, all 9th graders are required to take a health class, which covers basic sex education. So for me, that meant I was supposed to be getting sex ed when I was a freshman in 2020. But that didn't exactly happen. Because of COVID, I was stuck doing remote learning for my first year of high school. And my health teacher decided to cut the sex ed portion of the course way down to a lesson only about HIV and AIDS. So that's where I wanted to start, with my 9th grade health teacher at Landmark High School. Meet Mimi.
Well, I wouldn't say that I was interested in teaching health. I was thrown into it my first year of teaching. They didn't have a health teacher. So I first started, 12 years ago. Just thrown into it.
Mimi is one of the school's most energetic and sarcastic teachers. Going to her class is probably one of the favorite parts of my day, just because she always knows how to wake me up with her attitude. Because Mimi does think sex ed is important, I wanted to know what happened in our school during the pandemic, and why she only taught us about HIV and AIDS.
So what happened is during the pandemic, everyone was really freaked out about, as they should have been, coronavirus. So that sort of took over as what we needed to do. And my main concerns were keeping everybody in the class. And one of the laws in New York State is that children can opt out. Their parents can opt them out of sex ed. And there were many parents, actually, who were opting out. And my personal concern was, if I don't teach the kids, that they weren't going to have communication or contact. And I thought it would be better to just touch on the HIV AIDS in a way that would not make parents uncomfortable and at least build those relationships.
Although I am upset I wasn't able to learn other topics regarding sex relationships, I understand why Mimi made this call. Her job as a teacher and her relationships with the students could be jeopardized if she made families uncomfortable. Without a clear set of sex ed standards from the Department of Education, individual schools and teachers are left to make really difficult decisions on the fly. Some parents are uncomfortable with their kids learning about sex at school, and the truth is, some kids find it embarrassing to be in a classroom where an adult is talking about sex.
As someone who came from a very conservative and religious household, it just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
This is Aiden, an 11th grader at my school.
It would be one thing if it was an optional class, but if it's mandated that every student, particularly my state like New York City, has to take it, you would be making an uncountable amount of students, like myself, very uncomfortable with people who wouldn't want to hear about the subject. Their parents wouldn't want their children to hear about the subject.
So in that case, where would you get your information from?
Well, going back to my original point, saying like I'm very religious, I want to have sex after marriage and everything like that. I would just get my information from experience.
So in that case, do you think that like, I don't know if you were to go about your sexual experience, but you're not educated enough, do you think that that's like the best way to do it? Like, what if something goes wrong?
I feel like that is the best way to do it, because if something goes wrong, it's a mistake. We all make mistakes, and you chalk it up to the board. You remember that if something goes wrong, then it's like, all right, don't do that, or this isn't a good idea.
Whether it be because of religious reasons or just because they are embarrassed, students and parents have valid reasons for wanting to opt out of sex ed classes. I don't know how I feel about that. I wish more people would give it a chance. But let's set the opt-out issue aside for a second. I think the problem here is that depending on what school they attend, people who do want these lessons don't always get them, and that can have real consequences. I sat down with Taz Weisgerber, the Training and Technical Assistance Manager of the organization Answer, based at Rutgers University.
We are one of the only organizations, especially on a national level, that has this kind of teen-to-teen education through our newsletter and our website. So all of our articles and blogs are written by our teen staff members.
Answer offers sex ed programs and resources for people of all ages. Through Answer's website, millions of teens and adults have been able to access comprehensive and medically accurate information about sex. A lot of this crucial information is missing in most NYC schools.
The CDC does a report on schools and what they claim to teach, and it does show that in many of the important topic areas that are taught in sex ed, about 75% of New York City schools claim that they do teach these topics, like the high level. We talk about, STI prevention and healthy relationships and things like that. So that's awesome. However, just because they claim that they're teaching it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually are, or how in depth or how inclusive. But it also showed that there were some areas that New York City schools claimed that they really didn't teach. Like only 38% of them shared that they taught how to use a condom, which is something that should be so basic to a comprehensive sex ed course.
I also spoke to Jessie Berglund and Cindy Huss, the two collaborative directors of RISE, Healthy for Life.
When they are able to be in a classroom where they can be curious and ask questions and actually expect that they'll be answered, they will have lower rates of STI and pregnancy.
RISE is a Tennessee-based organization that offers responsible and inclusive sex education for students and parents. Jessie and Cindy expressed to me just how important it is for people to start taking this education seriously. For example, a lot of people think children who do get sex ed will start engaging in sex activity, but that is not true. Here's Cindy.
They will have lower rates of STI and pregnancy, due in part to also using contraception more effectively and more consistently when they do have sex, or postponing sexual initiation longer. They also tend to have fewer partners.
This is Jessie.
So I think with guardians, it's a lot of overcoming our own shame and about bodies and sex and the way that society talks about it. And so I think that their discomfort with that with themselves is what's the scariest thing. In a lot of our classes, people talk about how they are afraid to ask questions because they don't have the right language to do it, and they're afraid of being canceled or something like that.
Or being judged.
So it's about providing these spaces to allow the curiosity and allow people to come with whatever language they have and learn.
Cindy stresses the importance of bringing parents and guardians into these discussions.
That goes back to what would make an especially good sex ed program, which would be communicating and involving the families. They are not going to be at school, but a lot of parents never got effective sex ed either, and they don't feel well prepared. But if you send them home with information, or if you send home information about what their kids have been learning about, nothing specific about the class, but just so that they both have information, they have similar vocabulary and whatnot, then conversations can happen in a way that they can't if they don't have any kind of shared language.
So we've done parallel workshops where we've had kids in one room and guardians in the other, and we taught the same content to them. So it was 4th through 6th grade. So the adults are learning this 4th through 6th grade curriculum, but they were so engaged and had such great questions. And then, like Cindy just said, they're leaving with the same language, the same examples, and then when they're in the car on the way home, they can be like, oh, what did you think about that one situation? Like, how would you have responded to that? And that it continues that work outside of the classroom too.
Although many parents still have concerns about the age students should be getting sex education, Taz, Jessie, and Cindy all agree that high school might be way too late. Here's Taz again.
So you do think that it should maybe start a little earlier and then keep going up? Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of these things can even be taught before young people even get into school. Like the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests that young people should know the names of their body parts, including the terms for their genitals, at the same time that they learn all of their other body parts. So when you're learning eyes and ears and toes, they should also be learning the technical terms for the rest of their body parts.
The stats show us that sex education matters for our physical health, but this education is valuable for emotional health as well. I want to close with a story from a friend of mine. She has been my closest friend since kindergarten. We have known each other for the past 10 years, but there is still a part of her story that is hidden. My friend and I had gotten the same sex education in middle school, which again still only consisted of the HIV and AIDS topic. But we didn't get the information we needed to help us with romantic relationships.
Okay, so I just want to let you know that if there's ever a point that you feel uncomfortable or don't want to talk about something, you can let me know and I'll just go to the next question. I've known you for a long time, and I know that your relationship with someone in middle school was very rocky and it was very unhealthy. So can you tell me a little bit about what happened?
Okay, so it was around 7th grade. I had decided to get into a relationship with someone, and I had made it clear, like, in the beginning of our relationship that I didn't want to do anything I wasn't ready for, until, like, a year into that relationship where he kept, like, I guess, insinuating that we do, like, something, like, along those lines, and although I still wasn't comfortable, I thought it was, like, an action that you did when you love someone, so that's what I did.
I wondered what she thought about her relationship in regards to the education we got and how the lack of certain topics affected her.
Especially in the 6th grade, like, it was really a joke to all of us. Like, everyone was kind of, like, laughing about condoms and stuff like that. So there was a sense of, like, immaturity within that because we didn't understand, like, how serious sexual education was. So I am very to myself when it comes to intimacy, and I'm very scared to open myself up like that to anyone else.
Do you think that you mentioned that we didn't get, like, education on, like, consent, right, and that kind of thing? Do you think that if we did get that kind of thing, that it possibly could have helped you with this relationship?
I 100% think it would have helped me with our relationship, because talking about consent and, like, letting kids know that it is okay to say no is, like, something that is so important, because I didn't know how, like, important consent was, and I just thought, oh, well, if I love this person, it doesn't really matter if I don't want to do it, because they do. I did what I thought love was.
How many other people like my friend are there? The lack of sex education in New York City has been an ongoing issue with big consequences. According to a 2016 CDC report, nearly 1 in 8 New York City students said that they had experienced physical dating violence, higher than the national average. Many adults fear that teaching or learning sex ed means informing them with topics they aren't yet supposed to know. Why has this idea been normalized? In 2017, the city created a sex education task force that, in July 2018, issued a long list of recommendations, such as requiring sex ed training for health teachers and developing uniform teaching standards. Those recommendations have yet to be implemented, but Mayor Adams did provide an update earlier this year. The city is, wait for it, relaunching the task force. I attempted multiple times to interview someone from the NYC Department of Education, but my request was ultimately denied by the press office. In addition to the HIV and AIDS curriculum we already have, New York City should adopt a policy that mandates comprehensive sex ed standards that all schools are required to teach. This way, classrooms are more organized and everyone knows what they are going to learn. These standards should include relationships, decision-making, communication, gender identity, body image, birth control, and sexually transmitted infections. Instead of shying away from these real-life topics, we should focus on building an environment for students in classrooms to learn and understand issues, even if it feels uncomfortable to speak about them. It is time to stop being afraid of knowledge. This episode was reported by me, Shoa Khan, with production and editing support from Blythe Terrell, Melanie Bonilla, Sabrina DeKenney, Mira Gordon, and Taylor McGraw. Music from Blue Dot Sessions. Special thanks to Erica Wong and Good Studio, as well as Hindenburg Systems. The Miseducation podcast is a program of The Bell. Our work is made possible in part by the Pinkerton Foundation, the Summerfield Foundation, and FJC. You can learn more about our work and find all past episodes at bellvoices.org. If you're listening on a podcast app like Apple or Spotify, please drop us a quick rating and review. And don't forget to follow @MisEducationPod on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for listening.